All right, let me try to share a screen. Is it shared now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it shared?
Yes. Yes.
So when it's okay, give me a sign when it's okay for me to start. Yes, okay. So finally, this day came. I would like to thank you very much, Haris and Fenda, that you associated me and accepted me in your community. I'm outside of your community. I have not been student, neither coach, finished your academy, but I was interested and started to look for academies. I found you, and somehow, magically, I was given this access, and I'm very happy and thankful that I have this opportunity to observe my colleagues, other coaches, to participate in the discussions, and also to practice with other coaches. So I would like to thank you very much. I'm happy being here. So my today's presentation is about how to find our internal access in times of coronavirus times. I chose this because it is somehow touching all of us. It is something that can be considered as maybe a domain for professionals in psychology or psychological healing or healing coaches, but the times are so extraordinary and so touching all of us that I thought that it will be a topic that it will be helpful for and interesting as well for all of us. Haris, are you recording it or no? You recording? Okay. So I will start the presentation. The presentation, first some few words about the presentation. I wanted to do a more of a practical presentation. However, I would say it will be a mixture of conceptual exposure of some concepts and then practices. Because I think it's important for all of us to understand where the things are coming from, why they're like that, and I will do my best to share with you and to show you how did I understand it, how I interpreted it, and these are some learnings that I have done throughout the years, and also through my practical experience, because I work a lot with students, with young students, with colleagues. And also I've been supporting athletes in their career path. And I would like to share. So that will be a mixture. And in the very end, you will see instead of literature review, I will just put a lighter version to present the coaches that inspired me, and I borrowed some concepts from them. So that will be, in a nutshell, my presentation. So today, the times that we're living in are really unprecedented. If we look throughout the history, we can see that there were many other crises throughout the human history, like wars, diseases, natural disasters, which are like one point of the time, but also some long diseases like pest or in the influenza, something that the humanity did experience. Even if thinking of Ice Age, it was a long period of time where humanity had to change in order to survive. However, I don't think in any of these 10,000 years of human civilizations, we ever had any time that we've been confined to stay immobilized and to stay within the boundaries of few meters square, which is really an unprecedented. It's some people are calling it a great social experience, and this is very, very harsh on a psychological level. Another, this is in combination with another first in our time, is that the humanity have never been so globalized and so connected and interconnected with each other. So globalization is not something which is new. Globalization started since the ancient world. So you can see, only if we see the ancient empires, we can see that in their own boundaries, they try to globalize some regions within the globe, only thinking about a colonization period. The true globalization started through them, but the very last stages of the globalization, starting from the 1990s, really covered, and especially with the arrival of internet, really covered the totality of the globe. Especially the technological advancements like the travel, the tourism and travel, the boundaries which were opened, they have never been so opened. The visa restrictions really fell down. This made us very, very globalized. And of course, this is one of the I would say one of the reasons that this disease could spread so fast around the globe. So what does the COVID-19 does to the human? I find that there are different levels of impact. Of course, we all know about the physical level, you know, the disease, the millions of people already affected, thousands of people who already died around the globe. I will not stress this presentation on that, so I will not include this. You all know, and we are all bombarded with these facts. There is another level, another two levels in my view, psychological and spiritual level. And this presentation is all around the impacts on a human on psychological level. Although I find spiritual level quite interesting and quite intriguing for me, I will not touch it this time, but more or less, in my understanding, on spiritual level, the COVID-19 has quite surprisingly positive effect, because we are changing really deeply and probably irreversibly. But let's start with what the psychological impacts we can see in COVID-19. It is important to notice that actually there are different groups of people which are affected, but I find that the most affected group is the young adults between 18 and 35 years old, which are the most affected. They are the most precarious and more unstable still in life, but also psychologically. While the elder people reach maturity and also somehow financial stability, or children are protected by their families, they're in some way like in a cradle, because no matter what is happening, even in a wartime or very big crises, children, because of these cushions around them, this protection from the family, they do not feel so strong this crisis. The elder knew famine, wars, coup d'etat, etc. So they could experience very difficult times, and therefore they are strengthened their psychological resistance. But the young, I find, and because I also work with all range of categories of people, I find this is the one that is the most affected. Because they have never experienced, and also through, I would say, through the interconnections with the facility of life, they would never expect that life can be also so reversible. Other groups that are affected are also people living alone. I have some colleagues like that, and we're dealing with great problems they are facing, and they need some support. Professionals, highly positioned professionals which are experiencing burnout, and the burnouts are people who sometimes they don't notice that they are burnouts, but until they crash, and this is actually a trigger to crash, to reach this point of the crashing point of the burnout. Also people with some mental problems history, which at that times are either revived or exacerbated. The times of coronavirus. Other people susceptible to depressions as well, like a latent and or permanent or undercurrent mild depressions, for example. And also, according to a Russian psychologist called Yuri Burlan, which I really admire very much, and you will see in this presentation, I'm citing him quite extensively. People, and for those of you who knows this, his theory of the vector system theory, psychological vector system theory, there are 8 vectors. And from this theory, the skin and skin-eye vectors are the most vulnerable. But of course, all of us are experienced more or less some negative psychological impacts like anxiety, depression, mild or severe, which depression can be also like showing in the surface at certain moment, then suffocated and then reappearing. So it's cannot be only a constant, like a linear depression, but can be like appearing, disappearing, reappearing, and so on. Also, from what I observed, is a very acute feeling of loneliness, worry, restlessness, fear of the future. I think this one is experienced for all of us. Some insecurity and incapability to see clearly the tomorrow. Some triggers can be losing jobs. I have seen many people that, and in my family, I have my brother, my son as well, who lost their jobs, and this can be a trigger. Some split ups or some claustrophobic feelings. Some people, if they are claustrophobic also, they can be severely affected at that time because of the confinement. And also some family members' death at that time also can trigger very severe depressions. And the rest, I can just, it's not an exhaustive list. I just leave it to you. You name the rest. So what are our responses to the crisis? Of course, all of us as a human beings with our very complex psychology, we're trying to cope with this. Basically, we're trying to escape and shelter in some moments. Very often, we're trying to escape and shelter in the past. Yes, for example, I observed in Facebook, it's a largely now a spread out social media game of old pictures, favorite books that we really appreciated in our childhood or teenage, which is all expression of remembrance of the good old days. And here, I would like to just share with you one of the concepts that Bulgarian author, who is the author of the very famous book translated in many languages. I will get, in the end, I have it. I think something about a sorrow. Sorry, I'm a bit tired now, but it will come to you. So his Georgi Gospodinov, he speaks about these time shelters. We're trying to shelter in kind of a time islands, which are normally, they're located in our imaginary and spirituality. They are located in the past. So we're trying to jump in these time shelters in order to shelter ourselves because we do not see clearly the future and we're not hopeful for the future. We will come back in that later on because some of the exercises I propose to you are actually linked to that concept. Also, other things that we're observing, the overeating, or as the coaches of athletes says, you're eating your feelings, yes, or we're eating because of boredom, but basically it is a feeling of uselessness and we want to fill in our time and we want to move, we cannot move. Physically and also a internal move as a progression in our lives. So we are overly eating to combat the stress. And very often we want to calm down and structure our thoughts, minds, and days, but we are not capable. Some of us are more capable than others, but from what I've seen, people with difficulties, psychological difficulties, they cannot structure their days and thoughts as well. So messy thoughts, messy actions, lack of planning, lack of sleep, losing hope, losing external support, and losing time. And basically, it is all of the signals of losing our inner access. So I just wanted to show you how does it looks internally. This is a wonderful picture which I borrow from the Argentine tango. If some of you are practicing will know, it's called, this embrace is called apalado. It looks perfect. It was very nice, but actually this is only possible in times of a peaceful times for enjoyment. But when it happened in a stressful times, we're completely losing our access, and we're trying to lean on the other person in order to find support. However, we cannot always find it, or we cannot always find the right people. And we should try to find our own access. A little bit like this one, yes, and I'm showing you these images to try to illustrate how we should and we could actually, it's possible to be in this position. A little bit like a Pisa Tower, yes, it is standing for now 800 years or so, and it's not collapsing, finding it's very fragile but internal access. Thanks God they reinforce it and reinforce the foundation of it. Otherwise, they calculated that in maybe 100 years it will be collapsed. But if you look at this picture, is this embrace? It looks like this dancing couple are leaning on each other, but in fact it is an illusion, because they only look like leaning on each other, but here on the very bottom, on their feet, actually they are very strongly nailed to the floor, because there is a special technique of working with the floor and nailing our body, even though it's leaning on the floor. So it's very specific technique of not losing an axis when we are leaned. And it is a representation when there is some difficulties of life, like a hurricanes, in a figurative way of speaking, hurricanes making us, left and right. Our bottom, our foundation should be very strong and not allowing us to collapse. So as best as I could, I will give you I will propose you actually some exercises and some reflections, how we could do that, even though we are not so much affected by the coronavirus. And the first one is, as I call it, remaining still. Actually, on a spiritual level, if you look at it, and there is a lot of spiritual movements like White Brotherhood, Kabbalism, Kabbalist movement. Actually, they are saying that today the coronavirus is calling us to remain still, to shelter and to not to move, not physically, but really reconnect, internalize, and think about what is happening actually. So physically we succeed more or less, but psychologically we still struggle within. And I will explain why is that, and why we're feeling this staying at home, doing nothing is very often associated with this feeling of guilt or malaise or confusion, as something unnatural and losing focus. And it is easy to say remaining still, but it is difficult to do. And why is that? It is because, in my view, we have been already in this kind of scattered minds due to the lifestyle that we led before the COVID-19 came. Actually, maybe that's why, even we cannot prove it, but that's why COVID-19 came just now. even exactly in this moment, because we've been too much accelerated and we could not cope with it. So it's a message, you know, you have to relent a little bit and stop a little bit. Before that, if you remember, I'm one of them. I'm one of the millions maybe who feel it very strongly, maybe you as well, that we've been called by the system of overperformance. We've been called to overconsumption, overreaction, overproduction, and we were overly abused by the system. And that's why the idea to shift professions, we've been pushed this way to have this higher desire of career change or early retirement, because we could not cope and we were not happy anymore of the pace of things that were going, and we were surrounded with some things which were very unhuman and with unhuman pace and unnatural. And we started, especially me, maybe we started to be less performant, and as also probably a way to say stop to the system, say stop to this abuse. So according to Vadim Kurkin, which is one of the Russian psychologists that I use his exercises here, it is not a laziness. According to him, people are not lazy. There is not such thing like a lazy people. There are things which people with lack of motivation because of something. Sometimes this something we cannot explain it. It is very internalized and we cannot say why. But it is a desire to escape from the system. So remaining still at that time, it is not something which is very easily achievable. However, we were capable to start to try to do it and to relearn how to remaining still. And here I use a very nice expression that Italians with their fantastic lifestyle, very laid back, have, dolce far niente. This is the sweetness of doing nothing, and do not feel guilty of that. If you probably remember, it is exactly from Italy where it came, this idea and concepts of a slow travel, slow pace of life, and it is to actually regain these forgotten skills of doing everything at a more human pace and remaining still. You know, I want to share with you that I'm one of the rare specialists in the world about indigenous people, native people, especially native people in Canada. And I spent around more than 15 years trying to work with them, to stay with them, to understand them. One of the biggest lessons that I got from them is how to reconnect with the silence. I remember one elder, I spoke with one elder from the, I think it was from the Huron, yes, from the Huron community in Quebec. They said that actually, why you need the books? From the books you don't learn much. What you learn is go in the forest, go in the silence and listen to the silence, and you will receive the answers of your questions. And in this regard, I also would like to share here some statement from the book of Mirza Karim Nurbekov. It is a Russian ophthalmologist and also a life coach. He published the books, the series of books of The Experience of a Fool. If you speak Russian or read Russian, please read them. It's fantastic, very humoristic, but with a lot of lessons. So he says that when we pray, we talk to God. And when we remain silent, we actually allow to God to talk to us. I think it's a fantastic expression of what, illustration of what I want to transmit to you. And therefore, starting every day to practice, to enjoy and remain still in a silence is very important. I, for example, to really structure my day and my mind, I start the day with the 5 to 10 minutes remaining still at home. in total silence, observe in my room, observing the surrounding objects, and think about nothing, or try to think about nothing, yes, and therefore allow new thoughts to come to me. And I would just say that in this moments, God is whispering to us. So I would not call that a meditation, because for meditation, you need to learn how to meditate. It's not so natural, but just remaining still in silence, it is the stem cell of the meditation. It is so easy, it is so natural that it doesn't require any practice or preparation. So if you or your clients, you can propose to do this exercise. I think it's very easy but very efficient one. Another technique, it is reading. Reading as a stress antidote. It's like a remedy of stress. And I took this from the Russian psychologist Yuri Burlan, who actually, he's born in the former Soviet Union in the Republic of Ukraine. So he's actually Ukrainian, but he's from the Russian school of thought, of psychological school of thought. He's teaching, unfortunately, again, only in Russian from New York. Those of you who can listen, please, I invite you. But he's working with especially this region in Ukraine, which are in a war zone. He's giving free of charge teaching of how to keep calm during a war situation. So he thinks that one of the prerequisites, if you wish, is to read for pleasure books. It is really stressed. Books, not articles, not Facebook book posts, not chats, forums, not newspapers, or sorry for the typos, but not scientific facts, because they are very flashy. They are very shortcuts, and they are working in our short-term memory, and they're therefore erasable very easily. Also they are transmitting to us information and nothing other than information. But the books is something else and something different. You are from different countries, coming from different cultural backgrounds and educational systems, etc. But in any country, in any continent, there are classics which are writing fantastic books. So reading complex long stories is actually providing richness of the feelings. All these with the sudden turns, with the surprises, with the characters which are built up slowly but surely. They're built up throughout the book. So all that is developing three very important things. First of all, it is developing our empathy. Second is developing our emotional intelligence to understand the other, to put ourselves in the shoes of the other. But the most importantly, it is developing our imaginations, where reading books makes us capable again to reconnect with our imagination, which in the last few decades we are losing it. Yes. And according to him, the imagination is everything. It allows us to travel while we're staying home, to feel all nuances of the emotional spectrum, and to feel the feeling of the others. So I will, next slide, you will see some exercise related to this concept. But more to say, reading, it develops the stress resilience by making us emotionally flexible and also capable to do a time travels. Also, it brings us hope of the future by sheltering ourselves in these emotional shelters. I'm borrowing actually these concepts from the Mr. Gospodinov concept of the time islands, where we're sheltering in the time islands. And these are sort of emotional islands where we could shelter ourselves in there. And these emotional shelters are accessible to us throughout the books. And of course, during the reading time, it helps us not to worry, and it helps us to very easily to switch off and on between reality and in the imaginary world. So it gives us this flexibility to very easily to switch from one reality to another, which is very important in stressful times. And therefore, he and as well, I would recommend to reading 30 to 60 minutes every day. And I know that many people say, oh, I don't have time. It's not that we don't have time. It's the worry which is stopping us to read, and the worry that we don't have time, and the worry that we're losing our time, and therefore, and the worry that we need to how to say, we need to do something else. Sorry, I have to try to, to speed up, because I see the time is quite pressing now. Writing. The writing is life structuring. These are two examples that are important. I had one of my coaches, actually, is my mentor in my PhD. She said to me once, we think that we think, but in fact, we start to think only we will start to write. And the thinking is passing through the hand. Once you start to write, then you start to think, because it's passing through your hand. And therefore, the handwriting is very important. The youngsters a bit lost it a bit. So I don't know whether we can convince them to do it again, but at least we can try. So there are two types of writings which are important. The first one is writing diaries, to writing plans. This is technique to structure our day. Yes, and this is on the level of operational thinking. They should be short, realistic, and not overly ambitious. Sometimes can be for 1, 2, 3, 4, not too many points. I just gave you here example. I did today this one, did a picture and put it here. So they are kind of anti-stress pills and give a structure of orientation of the day-to-day basis. And the other thing which is important is to start to write diaries. Some people are not very much into that, but write letters or typing letters, sending emails to people that we like. And this is at the level of strategic thinking. So handwriting is not the same as a computer writing or texting. And we have to start to writing for resender. And the diaries also have a therapeutical effect. And you don't need to read what you write. You just need to write a few lines to one paragraph every day, but it does have very therapeutical effect. So another technique is travel in time. Coronavirus anchored us in home, but gives us huge opportunity to start traveling in time of our own memories, and to explore the lovely stories of our lives. So this is an exercise that I propose to you. Remember the happiness. This is coming from Mirza Karim Nurbekov again, and from Burlan. They are all the same. Russian schools are very interesting, have the same way of thinking. So it is to return to periods of time of ultimate happiness in your life. All of us must have some moments like that, and try to go back in time and plug with these memories, and try to observe all details. Yes, like in a movie, like in a picture. Observe the colors and stay as much as possible in this moment, and try to capture the feelings, all feelings with all the nuances, and try to savor the feelings as much as possible. And then remember the feelings of happiness. We can start to practice this every day for 40 days at least. 40 days is very magical numbers, because scientists think that this is the time where our brain is capable to embrace and understand the new codes, the new commands, and the new experiences. In all religions, 40 days is very important. We are mourning 40 days after someone is dying, or the babies, we are christening the babies not earlier than 40 days. So it is important. So then the brain will slowly start to learn again how to be happy. And this feeling of happiness is recalled and brought from the past to the present. And then we should try also as a second step to take from that moment details and try to recreate or supply in the present. Use the senses, colors, taste, smell, sound. So it's very sensorial. And I just try to make a picture here. So we're trying to jump in the past, staying in the past, and then bringing some experiences there and incorporate it in the present and start to dream, maybe with this image, to try to project it in the future. That's the next stage. For example, I remember my best moment in childhood, how to ride a bicycle. For me, that was a feeling of freedom with the wind in my hair. And after savoring that, I decided to start to bike now. And I decided to buy a bicycle immediately after the shops open. And I'm now drafting and exploring my itinerary in Abu Dhabi. Haris, do we have more time, or I need to wrap up? So I have some few slides about other techniques.
We do have about 20 minutes of time. So
20 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
I think, is it good to go, or?
No, I think we'll keep about last 5 minutes for question answers. If anyone has got a question for you, so you've got 15 minutes. Yeah.
So another important aspect is a family. A family as a source of our inner strength. According to Kurkin, again, in most of the religions and spiritual beliefs, family is what that gives us strength. So he proposes this exercise of drawing a family tree and drawing all of the members of our family. So I will just show it to you how it happens. I was thinking to do it today together, but we will not have time. So I will just try to explain to you. And if someone is more interested in these techniques, please do feel free to contact me. I leave my contacts in the end. But basically, what is this exercise? In the center, it is you, and you draw yourself, and then on your right side behind you, you have to draw your family on your father's side. Yes, basically on your right shoulder behind you. Yes, your father's family, your father, his mother and father, which is your grandmother and father, their mother and fathers, and so on until the time that you recall or you have a family history, and try to imagine even beyond all of the generations from the very beginning. Yes, and it doesn't matter whether the father or the mother are still alive or not. And all this concept is that also defunct members also are helping us from the outer world. And you can do that for your father's side and also from your mother's side. So is this clear, the picture, how it is here? Is it clear? I can have a feedback. Is that clear? Okay, so so the exercise is the following. Yes, once you draw this picture, you have to imagine that they are standing all behind you. Yes, you are on the front line and they're all behind you, supporting you. And your father put his hand on your right shoulder, and all of your ancestors are putting their hands on their shoulders. Yes, the way that it is designed here. Yes, and then you try to feel all this energy coming from your family to you, from your father's side, and the same from your mother's side. And then the exercise is the following: close your eyes and try to feel the energy which is flowing from all of them to you. And then just repeat and trying to repeat this positive affirmation: I'm part of you, I'm one of you, and I'm you. Thank you. Thanks to you, I am what I am now. And thank you for all your support. And apparently this is very powerful technique, giving a lot of energy and ground us in the floor, like these people that we have seen. And it is very powerful technique for people who are alone, far from their family, which are very usual for the expats like all of us. And I tried it, and it really, I had a very strong feeling of powerful energy coming to me. And you can see here, if you cry or have strong feelings, don't worry, this is normal. And you can repeat that for more than one time. So it's actually not so bad. Yes, it's 15 minutes left. Instead of conclusion, I just want to recap these few techniques. Listen to the silence, travel in time, bring into the present the happiness from the past, dream about the future. And attention, it's not plan for the future, but dream about the future, because dreaming is uplifting our feeling of happiness in the very same way that is done when we go back to the past. Yes. Read for pleasure. Classic literature, all genre, can be science fiction, can be romance, love romance, whatever makes you happy, but read for pleasure. Complex stories, not just short pieces. Handwrite short plans and diaries or letters to friends or to significant people. And imagine your family, be part of it and be thankful of it. Because we are disconnecting very often from the family, especially when we are very successful. Yes, I'm very successful. I come from a more modest background, and I lose this connection with family because I think, I'm now in the clouds. But actually, what is giving us strength is our family, no matter what is the background of our family. So this is very powerful technique to ground us and to give us strength. It doesn't eliminate or alleviate what you succeeded in life. It's in the opposite. It gives you even more strength. And in the very end, doing these techniques and doing these exercises, we will see that, of course, for people which are in a difficult psychological situation, they will see that the progress will be not linear and the healing will be not linear. Will be jumps, then plateaus, sometimes dips. It will not be, unanimous every day, but we have to try to do our best for the day, and we have to accept that there will be better days than other, which will not be so good. But important things is look at this punctured line here, which is actually showing us the bigger picture of our progress. Yes, this is how the coaches, for example, in sports are evaluating their athletes, how they're progressing in the time, not day per day, but looking at the biggest picture and trying to do our best every day. And in the end, I just exposed to you my inspirational coaches, which fed this presentation. Mrs. Neshka Robeva, it's a legendary Olympian coach of rhythmic gymnastics. This Bulgarian school of rhythmic gymnastics dominated for the last maybe 30, 40 years this sport. Another Bulgarian, Teodosi Teodosiev, the so-called Teo, which is a legendary high school Bulgarian Olympians of physics coach. Bulgaria is a little, like, not too small, but a relatively small country as a size and demography. We're 7 million people, but for the last, maybe from the 1980s, Bulgarian Olympians are top 3, competing with USA and China and Russia. So he had very specific techniques of how to educate and train his pupils. He got with the idea of the power and intelligence. There is a movie documentary made about him, which was emitted in the European Union in Brussels maybe 2 months ago. The Russian coach of psychological health, Vadim Kurkin, which I really respect very much about the very practical exercises that he's giving. Yuri Borlan, fantastic, very powerful, actually, the full theory of system vector psychology of 8 psychological vectors, teaching from New York, unfortunately only in Russian. And Professor Mirza Karim Nolbek, of Russian ophthalmologist and life coach, author of bestsellers and the series of the book The Experience of a Fool. I think he's also translated in other languages. And the literary prize winner, the Bulgarian author Georgi Gospodinos, with the book, many books, but one, I think in the world the most famous is The Physics of Sorrow. So these are my inspirational coaches. I thank you very much for your attention. These are my email and telephone numbers. So feel free to contact me and ask any questions now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. It was really a great learning presentation. I'm sure people will have questions. Let's hear from others if they have questions. You will also need to share this presentation with Sanchit, and so that
I already sent to Sanchit, yes, just a few minutes ago. I will correct the typos and add some more, and I will resend to him.
Sure.
No problem.
So guys, any question for Katia? Any thought, comment, feedback, not just question?
This time, Maya says, 100 years of solitude. Yes, fantastic.
I don't have a question, but I did want to say that there was a wonderful presentation. I learned a lot, and I really thank you for sharing it. It put a lot of thoughts, a lot of areas to think about and kind of reflect on. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brenda.
You're welcome.
Joe, do you want to add something? So, Katia, for me, what really resonated were the exercises that you shared, and I think they're really helpful in terms of seeing things differently and changing the perspective. They could really help an individual. So, thank you. That was a great learning there.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, probably these are things which I haven't met actually in the coaching techniques that I'm meeting here. So I thought maybe it would be interesting for you to see other techniques from other schools, because to be honest, these schools of thought are a little bit unknown. Yes, the Slavic school of thought, they're a little bit unknown. But I have this great privilege, I would say, to really take the best from West and East because of my background. I speak these languages, and therefore I have access to this literature. So it's a very interesting, indeed, for me as well.
Yeah. So I think there are not.
Can I say something, Haris?
Sure, Sangeeta. Go ahead.
I think in the beginning, when Katia started about the spiritual connect with coronavirus, I'd like to share something about that, if that's okay.
Yes, fantastic.
So basically, I've been reading a lot on that, and because corona means crown, so it also indicates that the crown chakra, which is the most highest chakra that a human being has, it allows you to connect with your, with the divine power very easily. So that's why when you see that during this time, we are getting to learn a lot and, grow a lot intellectually and internally, is because it is of the corona, that's the crown chakra, linking in with our divine powers, because we are going into solitude. I just wanted to bring that forward.
Yeah, that's very interesting. From what I've been learning and reading a lot on the spiritual level is that you know, it's a little bit an irony. It's like God laughing at us and say, maybe not God, but actually this coronavirus saying, you know, you think that you're the crown of the evolution and the crown of the creature of God, which in most of the religion, this is what we are. Told that we are, but look how you treat all of the rest of the world, the animals, you're polluting. So here we go, the crown, take it, see how heavy it is, and try a little bit to stop and to be more humble. And humility is the key word of it. Be a little bit more humble and reconnecting yourself and start to think what you are doing and whether you're doing your best, because you're capable of doing much better, much more different. So stop and think, because it's a lesson for us. This is what on a spiritual level I've been learning.
Yeah.
Let me see what is in the chat.
I just wanted to, Shane, you wanted to go?
Sasha, I cannot hear you. Can you speak more loudly?
Yeah, I'm just gonna come closer.
Thank you.
I just want to tell you that what stood out the most to me was the reading part, when you mentioned about reading books rather than articles, which helps the long-term memory. This part stood out the most to me, because I used to always believe that just reading whatever, whether articles, posts, or whatever, but the part where how it affects the memory was the most important one. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, Sasha, I will tell you that myself, I'm a scientist and also a teacher. And unfortunately, I have to, well, it's very terrible to say this, but I'm reading lately for maybe the last 15 years, mostly articles, scientific articles, student writings, and also our common source of common culture, and which are not sheltered from any Facebook and all this social media. And indeed, I could see how I'm changing, not for the best, but for worse. So we really, it's something which is important for us to really maintain this youthfulness. We need to remain youth, like before, when we were teenagers and reading for pleasure, and our imagination was wild and running everywhere. So it's a responsibility for ourselves to keep that through reading. Yes, indeed.
Katia, it's Shane here. On the topic of reading, one of the books I'm currently reading is called The Pursuit of Happiness, and a history of happiness, essentially. And I put this as a juxtaposition to The Physics of Sorrow by Goloptanov. My apologies. What is the essential lesson from The Physics of Sorrow?
Oh, there are a lot of things. I could not really point out one, but basically, it is a very strange book, because it's a book that you can find things. When I speak with people, you know, what did you learn from this book? Everybody says different things. Like everybody was like so multi-layered that everybody picked up something that is really for them. So I could not really answer this question, but I would invite you to read it, all of you. It's a fascinating book, and this author is basically very good in writing. So he's very good. Yes. So this the geography of happiness, is that what you're reading now? The geography of happiness?
It's called The Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of happiness.
All the way through.
The same author who is writing about Hugo? Is the same?
Could be. I'd have to go and get the book off the table.
All right.
But it's that particular phrase, and it is an argument of in all sorts of cultural areas, and reading and writing is at the heart of what's written down as our experience that contributes to our state of mind and helps all of us get through this.
This is the very foundation of our civilization. We could not have any civilization without reading and writing. So, for example, as I said, well, I was investigating this culture which have only oral culture, oral transmission of the knowledge, and they are disappearing or could not progress so much like those who started to write and read. So I think it's an essential thing which are now we're losing and or we're modifying. But yeah, I think it's a bit sad that we're not writing anymore, handwriting. Okay, so I think there is no any more questions.
Yes, there are not any questions, but there's some reflection, I think, in the moment for everyone. So thank you, Katia, for creating those moments for everyone and bringing such a enriching topic for us to learn from you. So thank you once again, and see you soon. Yeah.
Thank you for accepting me. Yes, and me too. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.